and thank you for joining us for another session of PropTech Collective Spotlight Series. This is a fantastic series that we started a little while ago with the help of our friends at Dentons, where we bring in industry experts from all aspects of the real estate world, whether it's PropTech or investment or large real estate folks, just to sort of get their thoughts on their experience and trends that they're seeing going forward. So we're very, very thrilled to have Theresa Warnaar with us today from KingSett Capital. And of course, again, we wouldn't be able to do this without the help of our friends at Dentons. Just a quick intro, my name is Danielle Smith, and I'm one of the organizers with PropTech Collective, looking after our events and programming. And I'm thrilled to be here today. I will pass it over to Tracy.
Hi, everyone, and thanks, Danielle, so much for the introduction and the warm welcome. My name is Tracy Molino. I'm counsel in our Dentons Toronto office. So Dentons is the world's largest law firm. We currently have over 12,000 lawyers around the world. So pretty much in any country or city that you can think of, we probably have somebody there to help. Personally, my practice focuses on financial services regulation, the regulation of payments and payment technology, so PayTech, and then FinTech in general. And so PropTech is one of the technology areas that I probably have the least exposure to in my day-to-day life. So I'm pretty excited for this interview with Theresa. And I'll just start with the first question right off the bat. Theresa, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, your career journey, what led you to your current position today? Just give us a little bit of an introduction to you.
Great, thanks for having me today. So I was in high school and decided that I would apply to the University of Waterloo to study urban planning. I thought that would be interesting. I didn't really know what it was, and that started things off. Got me really interested in real estate during my studies. And when I graduated, I asked a friend of mine to take a look at my resume. She worked in human resources, and turns out she worked for a real estate company, Cambridge Shopping Centers back then. She gave me some comments on my resume, but a few weeks later, she called me back because they were looking to hire in a contract position to do some data entry work, taking asbestos surveys and typing in unit by unit what kind of asbestos was in every unit in every shopping center in that portfolio. So started doing that job, and it was interesting for, an hour, maybe the first couple of days. And then it was a little tedious, but it was my job, and it was my first job out of university. So I did it. Over time, the team that I worked with was cross-functional, operational focused. I worked in environmental management, capital project planning, working with utility accruals and utility costing, operating expense disputes with national tenants. I got into operating statistics and even did a fair amount of database programming myself. So it was an interesting time, my time at Ivanhoe, and it transitioned into working in the asset management group. And when I was in asset management, I got to work on some really great properties, worked in Germany and Spain from Canada, and really got to see how different parts of the world do business, especially in retail. It was very interesting. You might not think, but it's quite different, that's for sure. And after about 17 years, I thought, it might be time to look at doing something else, doing something a little different. And there was an opportunity at KingSett that came up, and I, decided I'd go for it. It was a little scary leaving after 17 years, of course, but the opportunity was there and very, very interesting. I didn't really know how interesting it would be though, because, I get to touch a lot of different things at KingSett in my job today. So I'm responsible for the retail properties and the retail spaces in our portfolio. And also the asset resilience piece of my role encompasses sustainability and PropTech. So that's what makes the job very interesting, because those are very different areas. And, it's never boring, that's for sure.
Wow, that is an incredible, and I love the blend of, the traditional real estate avenue and how it blended technology all throughout. And now obviously PropTech is a huge theme that we're seeing emerging. So it's nice to see that sort of come full circle in your career of, the hardcore actual physical properties with the technology aspect as well. That's fantastic. And so In your current role at KingSett, you mentioned you worked on value creation with a specific focus on retail spaces. Obviously, it's to no surprise that e-commerce has had a big boom over the past, not even just 5 years, but longer than that. So can you talk about what you've seen in terms of this evolution in like the bricks and mortar space, and how e-commerce and the rise of e-commerce has sort of had an impact both on your properties or in general that you've seen across the industry?
I mean, I think we've been hearing about this retail apocalypse for years, it seems. Honestly, it feels like 10 years we've been hearing about the retail apocalypse. Maybe it's more, maybe it's less, I don't know. But the reality is that that's what retail has always been. It's always been about evolution. People have been putting up signs and selling goods to consumers for a really long time. The logistics have evolved, what people buy, where they buy it from, that has evolved. It's always evolving. And, I think what we're seeing now is the story is, it's about the brand, and you need to make sure that that brand experience is on point. We're realizing that bricks and mortar isn't an option. It's a requirement. It's part of one of those omni-channel components now. And, there aren't only multiple channels, but those channels are so connected, and you have to move between them seamlessly. So yes, e-commerce has, seen a great rise, especially over the pandemic, but the story about the brand is really where I think things are at, and that brand experience.
Yeah, highly tactical and experiential for sure. I know myself, I like to see things, in person and touch and feel, depending on what it is that I'm purchasing. So I myself hope retail absolutely never goes away personally. But just as sort of like a follow on to that sort of topic, I mean, in terms of, retail and real estate, you'd mentioned, in your previous roles, on the statistical aspect of it and, on the metric side of it. So where do you sort of see, technology playing in a role, sort of like transforming the retail side of the real estate industry, and how that sort of plays in?
Well, I think that, we've heard a lot of talk about the last mile. I think that that's something where technology is going to really help us. We have to come up with the idea, or the concept of how to get goods to people faster, using the space that they already have. When you want something, you kind of want it. Sometimes you can wait for it, but sometimes you really need it, or you really want it quickly. So, using the bricks and mortar locations, whether it's in a mall or an industrial space or some other, piece of real estate, to get goods from one place to the customer and get it there quickly and not damaged, all of these things. That's where, I think that there's a lot that can evolve from a technology standpoint, because we're not quite there yet. It's coming. It will get figured out, but it's not that easy yet. And it might be easier in bigger cities, New York City, downtown Toronto, but let's talk about smaller cities like Saskatoon or, Winnipeg. It's not there for places like that yet. And then you have, even the smaller towns from there.
Yeah, for sure. We definitely want things immediately. We've definitely been trained through tech first firms to want things right now, if not yesterday. So I totally empathize with that.
I think that's a really interesting point about the idea that we want what we want, sort of as soon as we decide that we want it. One of the things that I wonder that's sort of coming out of the growth of e-commerce is, the additional requirement that we actually have to know what we want, to know that it's the right thing for us, and that we're actually getting what we think we're getting, which is where I think, probably with the growth of e-commerce and COVID, lots of people have sort of ordered the wrong thing online, or they order something and it shows up as a 4-inch model instead of a foot long kind of poster. But so I think that's really interesting. The idea that you want things immediately, I think, is sort of one class of purchases, and then getting the right thing for the right purpose, the way that you would like to see it, is also something else. But I wanted to pivot back to what you were talking about sort of the other aspect of your role, which is in asset resilience. And I have to admit, I really am not familiar with what that concept is. So if you could just elaborate a little bit more about what asset resilience is and what that entails for your job, that would be great.
I think that, from my perspective and the way that we've organized, that function under that umbrella is really about building performance, building technology, sustainability. Those are the functions that, fall within my group. They cover all of the asset classes at KingSett. It's not just the retail piece. So that's interesting for me as well, because I'm not just focused on technologies or sustainability related to retail, but across the asset classes. The concept of resilience is really about how buildings and businesses can prepare for a disastrous events and, quickly return to operations right away. That's what we're talking about, making sure that our buildings are prepared for changing markets, that they remain best in class, that, we can do this by implementing cyber protocols or new technologies, or, those are the sorts of things that we would do within our group. And so that's why, the concept of resilience sort of ties into that, and making sure that our business remains resilient and sustainable over a longer term.
And so it sounds like technology is probably pretty important across the concept of asset resilience too. Is there anything in particular that you think innovative ways to be leveraging new technology, or anything that really stands out to you to help you with your job today that's maybe a new development?
Yeah, so, a couple of examples, when we did something like this a couple of years ago, we had been working with this group to put sensors on pipes so that if there was ever a leak, we would know about it quickly. I mean, our insurance costs are so significant. Our, premiums, our deductibles on, water leaks, it's just out of control. So we thought, oh, if there's this technology, let's take a look at it. So we'd been working through it. And, one of the things that we talk about often is that you want your technology to solve a problem. It's not just about it being something shiny, a shiny penny to have. Oh, look at what I have, something shiny in my common area. It can be that back of house stuff too. That's really, saving you money in the long run. So we'd been looking at these sensors, and we were having them installed on Tuesday. And on Sunday night, there was a leak that started and wasn't detected until Monday. And, not a great set of facts, but that is a case in point that we said, wow, if only we had done it a little bit, days earlier, it would have been, a very different outcome. But at least the technology was there, and we knew that we were solving a problem. So thankfully, we still have the technology installed and all the rest of it, and it works quite well. But those are the sorts of things that, we're looking for. We want to find ways to solve those operational problems and, make the properties run better, more efficiently.
That's, I know obviously the insurance side of things is definitely a huge aspect. I work with a company that's a division of CoreLogic, and a lot of the data products that they have are things that I would have never thought of. They have like hail tracking trends that will notify insurance clients to move your vehicles inside because there's a risk of hail, which then of course lowers claims and what have you. So like these kinds of data points to minimize the risk, and especially on the insurance side of the house, it's just fascinating to see how technology and the data, helps to predict and then also mitigate these things. It's fantastic.
I think with insurance too, because, there have been so many more natural disasters or climate related events and claims that flow from there. It's a massive challenge for that industry. And obviously for us, that's why our premiums are what they are. And we're doing anything and everything we can to prove that we have systems to watch for leaks and, mitigate them in advance of causing any real damage. I think the insurance industry is a big, driver for some of this technology out there for sure. Obviously, operating efficiencies is another reason that we're seeing so much growth in property technology, but I think insurance is a big reason as well.
Yeah, definitely complementary. And so, we've sort of talked about retail and that sort of thing, but given your your career background from the institutional and the private side of real estate. So, you know, you have insight sort of on both. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges currently faced in the industry on you know, the institutional versus private side of real estate, and maybe some of the opportunities or the things that are going well on sort of both sides of the house?
Nobody really saw COVID lasting this long, or the impact that it would have on people from a mental health perspective. I think that, you know, one of the big challenges we have is getting past COVID and resuming our lives. When can we do that, and when will it happen? And I also think, you know, we're in a bit of a bubble in the GTA, Ontario, compared to a lot of other places in the world, or even within Canada. So, you know, there's been a lot of volatility for many people personally and professionally, but I still think our industry is resilient, and our people that work in our industry are resilient. And, you know, because I work so closely with a lot of retail focused people, they've always seen change. You know, as I said earlier, we've always been, you know, faced with some sort of upheaval, and it just continues on. People, you know, continue to do their best and to, you know, wake up every day and get deals done and work through this. And, you know, I think, you know, the forward-looking indicators would suggest that a lot of businesses are now actively planning for a return to work. And I think once that happens, that will really, you know, galvanize a lot of people and, you know, make them feel better personally, but also, you know, business will resume, because it feels a little bit like we've been doing business, but it's not easy. It's cumbersome and it's laborious, and it doesn't have to be like that, because we know how smoothly things can work when you are, you know, sitting across from someone and actually having a conversation with them.
Yeah, yeah. And just sort of, you know, one little hinge question related to this is, you know, there's also been a lot of talk of, you know, especially in very dense urban areas, that some of the, you know, previous commercial or office space might be sort of repurposed for either residential or mixed use retail or what have you, or, you know, co-working spaces that are available to, you know, multiple users. What are your thoughts on, you know, again, with institutional, private, or what have you? How do you sort of see a shift post-COVID on these kinds of spaces maybe being reimagined or re-leveraged?
I think that'll exist for every property. Everyone will always look at, you know, how should we repurpose this? Is it highest and best use? I think that's been going on for a long time. You know, that's been, you know, years in the making coming to that. And, you know, does that accelerate now? I'm not sure. Maybe some of the co-working, you know, discussion will evolve a little bit, but, you know, I also think that, you know, people are looking forward to getting back into the office in general in one way, shape, or form. You know, we've heard about hybrid, back to the office, like a hybrid approach. I'm not sure how long that lasts. People will try it out, and it will just be an evolution. I think that there is something to be said for collaboration, because that's what humans like. Humans like to be with other people. It's why, you know, my kids who are on their phones nonstop, they, you know, we joked at first that this is, you know, their best lives, being at home and in front of the screen all the time and nobody's yelling at them to get off their phones, but they're dying to go to the mall. Like, and I was letting them go to the mall when the malls were open, but now just being closed for this long, they're just dying to go to the mall with their friends, because they want to be around people and see other people. So they're tired of shopping online.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think at first there was this idea of eliminating the commute and sort of eliminating the superfluous parts of your day, right? You know, oh, I don't have to talk to this person in the hallway. I don't have to do this. I don't have to do that. And then I think over time, people gradually have started to come to terms with the fact that those things are not bad. Maybe the commute in isn't ideal, but, you know, that there are interactions that we have every day that are sort of the cornerstone of our routine and our life. And there isn't really the same opportunity to have, you know, kind of meaningless conversations at work. And so I think people are really missing that outlet for just, I think it's probably just socializing, like you said, but it happens in very small ways in the office. And so I think there's a pent up demand for that kind of contact that's gonna come rushing back.
We've talked a lot about that in our office. We've onboarded a fair number of people throughout the pandemic. And, I feel that our company, so many of us have worked together for so long that we have that human capital and those small conversations to draw on. And these new people, it's really hard to get that with them, because I also think that for some crazy reason, we book our Zoom meetings back to back all day long. We would never do that in person, because you have to have time between to go to the next meeting location or to grab a coffee. And when you are between meetings, that's when you say, hey, I'm going for a coffee. Does anyone want one? Or does anyone want to come? You miss out on so much of that. And, people that have started in new positions in new companies during the pandemic, my hat is off to them, because it must be a real challenge to sort of feel like you're making a connection.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm speaking personally, we talked about sort of like the office space and this sort of thing, but like the trend of retail therapy is real, right? So like people that are very visual, very tactical, depending on what it is that you're looking for, like it's an actual thing. People actually enjoy going to seek out whether it's a deal or, choose or be inspired when you are, in the store and you didn't necessarily go for that, but there is definitely enjoyment in that. And I can see that being as a really great opportunity for retailers to reimagine the experiences, and where it's not just a place where you go to buy products, but a whole sort of, experiential, sort of immersive thing that retailers can provide to people who have now been deprived of these experiences for so long. So I hope to see that kind of a trend where they get very creative and curious to sort of see how they can elevate the retail experience for when we can get back to our, in-person life, in real life.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. And so I know, we've talked about, the aspects of, the larger pieces of the industry. And you said that you do deal with PropTech a little bit in your role now. So maybe you can talk to us a little bit about sort of how you interface with PropTech. And from the ones that you've seen or the interactions or the knowledge that you have from the community, what advice would you give to PropTechs that are sort of looking for adoption of their technology by large institutional or private real estate firms? So as somebody who deals with PropTechs and, can understand from their perspective, any sort of insights you can give would be fantastic.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I would say that we get a lot of inbounds from different groups. And, I think the important thing for me that we always talk about is this going to solve a problem for me? Or is this something shiny and new that everyone has? And, I don't know, it's a robot doing something in your common area. If this is solving a problem for me, I want to hear about it, because sometimes I don't even know that I have that problem, and that's okay. That's great. Show me, tell me about it. And, I like to pilot. Let's pilot. How can we do that easily? And, it's not always easy, and that's okay. We're okay to try hard things, but let's work together and find solutions, as opposed to it being, well, this is what we do, so if you guys want to try it, you can try it. Like get excited and jazzed about it, and get us excited about it. And, from our perspective, KingSett doesn't manage our buildings directly. They're managed by our third-party managers or our JV partners. And, they're always so willing to have conversations with us and different groups that we bring if there is, a real solution to a real problem. They'll try it out. And we've done that with various groups. And it's very rewarding, to see, okay, well, wow, this is great. Okay, let's try it somewhere else. Let's, expand the program. Who else are you talking to? We're always very happy to give, our views on different groups that we've worked with as well. So, that's something that I think is helpful to them in their process, both, the other owner landlord and the startup as well.
Right. Yeah, fantastic.
And just as a follow-up to that, so I was struck by your mentioning the idea of the sensor on the pipe. So I tend to work a lot in payment technologies. We always call payments the plumbing of the banking industry. So it's sort of the back end processes that nobody really notices until they, break or something goes awry. And so I was wondering if you, in my day-to-day life, I tend to hear pitches from people who are sort of trying to solve a surface kind of problem or a problem that they might perceive. But sometimes there's a bit of a misunderstanding of kind of the industry, or maybe overlooking the chance to really dig in and solve more of a structural problem. So do you tend to see the same kind of tendency to be more sort of almost end user focused rather than really getting into the nuts and bolts of your business?
Yeah, and I think that's another thing. It's difficult in a startup if you're trying to expand to another industry, and you've got a great idea and it works in banking, but how does that help in real estate? Or that's one scenario. There are many, but we often see groups that come and say, well, bank XYZ has done this. Why wouldn't you want to do this as a landlord? You own shopping malls, as an example. And I would say, well, that's not really how it works. We don't control their point of sale system or whatever the situation is. And I think that's one thing that, we can often spend a lot of time educating, but if there's a nugget, that a strand that we can pull on and maybe explore a bit more, we're willing to do that. But, it's helpful to have some of that thought out in advance of coming forward, because it's tricky. Otherwise, you might not see that nugget or strand to pull on. And then that's not necessarily a great use of their time or ours. So.
And just, maybe as we're starting to sort of wrap up, just some thoughts on trends that you might be seeing coming down the pipe in terms of investment trends, just from firms like KingSett or other large sort of folks that do have real estate portfolios. Can you sort of see or understand any directions that large organizations might be going in now as they look to invest in real estate opportunities going forward, post-COVID or just in general?
I just wanted to clarify. So
Yeah.
I paused for a second. Do you mean investment in actual real estate or technology?
Yeah, both. I mean, investments both in the physical properties as well as the technology that might power them or be embedded within them in general. Yeah.
Okay. I think, one of the big trends that we're seeing is the rise in ESG. And, ESG has this big social component to it. There's also where that goes from a real estate standpoint is into the tenant engagement world. I think that's a really big push that we're seeing to make sure that our tenants are engaged. They like to be in our buildings. They like the spaces we've created, that there's enough greenery, not too much greenery. There's the right amenities. There is the ability to connect, to ask questions. There's nothing worse than arriving and realizing that one of the elevators is out of service in the building. You want to know that in advance so you can get there a little bit early. I think anything to do with engagement of the people that are in your space, and that's multi-res, office, retail, any of the asset classes, engagement of the people using your spaces is really, really important. So we need to be investing in tools to help us get across that line.
So as a really fun part of our Spotlight series, we also love to do what's called rapid fire questions with all of our guests. Again, just to get to know them a little bit better and get some insights into their interests and what sort of fires them up. So I'll go first here. So first place on your list to travel to when we can travel again?
Somewhere hot with a beach.
Amen.
I was thinking of exactly the same question too, but I would say, how soon do you think, or how soon after reopening do you think you'll be returning to your office, or are you going to be a work from home convert forever?
No. And listen, I have an hour and 45-minute commute each way. So listen, I can't wait to.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Wow. Do you drive or do you do transit plus drive a little bit, or is it like a hybrid?
I drive to the GO station and hop on the train from there.
Got it. I used to do that from Whitby daily. And yeah, it was an hour and a half door to door. So I empathize with you on that.
Yeah.
So next on the rapid fire list, is there a book you always recommend, whether it's personal or, you know, fiction, nonfiction? Is there just a book that you would recommend to anyone and everyone?
So it's a parenting book. It's called Drop the Worry Ball. So it's a great book about letting your kids fail at small things when they're little.
That's good lessons to take forward no matter what, because I think we definitely have a culture that says we should embrace failure, but I still think we're coming to terms with the fact of like actually failing forward and successfully. So yeah, I think that book would apply to kind of anybody for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like it's applicable to the legal profession as well, for sure. So have you picked up any hobbies during the lockdown?
Baking.
No.
Yeah, I make muffins a lot. I have, you know, 2 teenagers, and one is a almost 16-year-old boy, and he'll eat 4 muffins at a time. So good thing I've been baking muffins.
Gosh, can't keep up. And I just read an article now that said wheat prices are double what they were at the same time last year. So definitely have fun as you have growing teenagers. The rapid costs of increase here. And so the last question I guess we can wrap up with is, if you weren't working in real estate, what would you be doing?
Oh my goodness. I might be like a naturopath or an acupuncturist. I don't know why. I know 2 wonderful ladies who do some great work. So that's probably what I would do, but I don't know.
No, that's definitely fantastic. Well, we've come to the end of our time with Theresa, and we can't thank you enough for sharing your insights and sort of your perspectives on what we might see coming down the pipe in terms of PropTech and the industry in general. So thank you so much again for your time and for joining us. And huge thanks and shout out again to Dentons for making this series possible. And thanks to my counterpart, Tracy, for having some great back and forth conversations, and looking forward to having you join us again. Thank you so much, everyone.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.